Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Austin Software Cooperatives Meetup Group. This month, we're going to be reviewing the High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard. And let's jump right into it. So, some basic overviews before I even jump into this introduction. This book is it's kind of your classic self-help type book that would maybe fall under the kind of probably business self-help. It's along the lines of the Strength Finders and your Dale Carnegie, Winning Friends, Influencing People, and Seven Effective Habits or Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and other books of that ilk. This book tries to follow along the lines, from what I can see, uh, of the Strength Finders, where there's a lot of polling of managers, and within this, in the case here, high performance individuals, what they define as high performance individuals, in order to get some type of statistical answers. So it's kind of a falls within something like psychology, sociology, but it's really like uh, lies within the if you can call it the coaching field. So having said that, this book is actually critical of some of the material that's out there. One of them being the Strength Finders. And if you're not familiar with the Strength Finders books, the titles are, and I want to say the author, there's a couple different authors within the series. Marcus Buckingham, I think, is one of them. But first, Discover Your Strengths. And the second book is, no, First Break All the Rules is the first book. Uh, Now Discover Your Strengths is the second book. And there's a couple other ones in the series. This um, this book tries to say that you need other um, habits or other attributes, which really habits that you perform in order to be a high performing individual. So let's get into uh, what it's saying here. So what's not working? Some of these kind of euphemisms. So work hard, be passionate, focus on your strengths, practice a lot, stick to it, be grateful. He's saying that these are not working in order to become a high performing individual. So some of the questions that he set out to um, get the answer to were why do some individuals and teams succeed more quickly than others and sustain that success over the long term? Of those who pull it off, why are some miserable and others less happy on that journey? What motivates people to reach for higher levels of success in the first place? And what kinds of habits, training, and support help them to improve faster? And he's trying to figure out what types of habits. Um, so here's a definition for high performance. High performance refers to succeeding beyond standard norms consistently over the long term. There's some uh, expansions on this definition. Here's um, some general rules of thumb here that are from his research. So high performers are more successful than their peers. Yes, yet they are less stressed. Kind of counterintuitive. Um, High performers love challenges and are more confident that they will achieve their goals. They're healthier than their peers. They're more happy. So that one might be a little counterintuitive. High performers are admired. They get better grades. They work passionately, regardless of traditional rewards. And they're assertive and they serve beyond their strength. So this one is kind of going against some of the common views within the literature. And so this is the introduction. Let's jump over to Beyond Natural. Some of this is kind of a precursor to the rest of the book. Just, I would say, a general overview of this chapter is really saying you you can achieve if you perform these habits. You can have upward mobility if you perform these habits. So um, there's it's really kind of a pragmatic type argument. You really, in order to get your maximum outcome, you probably want to perform these habits. You're probably not going to want to concentrate on the environment that you came from and other things that might be setbacks for you individually. And so this chapter tries to say you can basically you can do it if you work hard enough, but it's not really work hard enough. It's if you perform these habits. And so the author has done a bunch of research within a bunch of different fields: sociology, psychology, behavioral economics, and I want to say that he was a consultant at McKinsey, specializing in leadership and performance. And then he left and started doing this stuff on his own. So here, what has emerged from our work and in the scientific and academic literature is that success is achieved not by a specific type of person, but rather by people from all walks of life who enact a specific set of practices. This is some of the testing that they did. They tested 30,000 people in a bunch of different countries, trying to figure out the high performers. So here are the habits: seek clarity on who you want to be, how you want to interact with others, what you want, and what will bring you the greatest meaning. So, first one is clarity. Second one is energy. So, generate energy so that you can maintain focus, effort, and well being. Third one is raise the necessity for exceptional performance. The fourth one is increase productivity in your primary field of interest. Fifth one is develop influence with those around you. And the sixth one is demonstrate courage by expressing your ideas, taking bold action, and standing up for yourself and others, even in the face of fear, uncertainty, and threat. These, in the nutshell, these are the habits, and each one, there's a chapter for each one of these. We'll be going through the first three here. Um, Again, you may have noticed that nowhere on this list does it say to focus on your innate gifts, talents, blessings, past, or strengths. So, kind of is really laying down the gauntlet against the kind common thought there. Um, so, let's go ahead and get to the first chapter. There's a bunch here. I will say he talks a bunch about happiness, another counterintuitive things that I thought. Um, and it um, correlates with high performance. So he has a definition of happiness, but I think it's decent. So this chapter, we're going to get into clarity. I found this chapter to be, I'd say, pretty enlightening. One of the things to remember about the position that he's taking is that these are all habits, so they're continuously being revisited and applied instead of being kind of static. So they're dynamic. So the idea of clarity, you might think intuitively that I'm clear on the goals that I want to achieve in the future. And while that is somewhat true, the idea is that there are habits where you're consistently clarifying those goals, you're revisiting them. And so that's the habit that is a predictor of high performance. Um, so the first part of each one of these chapters, he has an anecdote. This one, there was an individual who was a high performer, and then they were starting to have burnout. He uses that as an example. And he uses some of the terminology that's in the Strength Finders books, so like achiever, and saying that sometimes people might think of achiever as what you would think as a high performer, and he's saying that that's not the case, kind of. So one of the things with achievers is improving a bad thing is easy for achiever, but messing with a good thing is terrifying, right? And so this whole idea with clarity is kind of the solution for this, and he's going to get into it. Let's go into this basics here. So our research shows that compared with their peers, high performers have more clarity on who they are, what they want, how to get it, and what they find meaningful and fulfilling. We found that if you can increase someone's clarity, you up their overall performance score. And something about all of these different habits, each one of them moves you towards high performance. They're all related, but you can increase any one of them and get better. Um, so let's see here. You generate clarity by asking questions, researching, trying new things, sorting through life's opportunities, and sniffing out what's right for you. Again, it's a practice. The research tells us that successful people know the answers to certain fundamental questions. Who am I? What do I value? What are my strengths and weaknesses? What are my goals? What's my plan? These questions may seem basic, but you'd be surprised how much knowing the answers can affect your life. Studies show that having a specific plan attached to your goals, knowing when and where you will do something can more than double the likelihood of achieving a challenging goal. Right. So this is uh, an expansion on this insight. You need to have unambiguous and challenging goals. Decades of research show that having specific and difficult goals increases performance, whether those goals are created by you or assigned to you. Clear stretch goals energize us and lead to greater enjoyment, productivity, profitability, and satisfaction with our work. Subjects with greater clarity also tend to report that they are performing with more excellence than their peers and feel that they're making a greater difference. And one of the insights, he has more, but one of the um, low hanging fruit action items is journaling about after you ask these questions of yourself. Journaling about them. So let's see. In almost every basic question of who they were or what they wanted, the high performers had a great ability to focus on the future and divine how they would achieve excellence. They rarely focused on their present personality and preferences. So it's this practice of increasing your clarity. Um, it's kind of counterintuitive. So when someone says, "Who are you?" with those answers to those questions that he was saying before, "Who are you? What are your goals?" and so on and so forth. It's really those are secondary. They really high performers are really actually preoccupied with who they're going to be and what they're going to do. So now talking about uh, clarity itself and digging into it, there's these four categories: self, social, skills, and service. Let's go into self. We found that high performers can articulate their future self with greater ease than others. So this is kind of a, I would say, a major concept, that this way of viewing clarity, it focusing on the future is kind of one of his important concepts or high priority concepts. High performers spend a lot of time thinking about their best self and the ideal they're trying to grow into. In interviews with his 10 highest scoring and 10 lowest scoring clients on the high performing index, he found that the high performing clients report thinking about their ideal future self and engaging in activities related to it, relating to that almost 60 minutes more per week than the lowest scoring clients. So it's a habit. Like he keeps trying to drive home. So they envision that positive version of themselves and then they actively engage in trying to be that. And here's the book has a lot of action items when you're reading it, because it's from a coaching perspective. So there's kind of things that you could apply immediately. I would say in the very beginning of the book, he just says, stop everything and go ahead and take this test. It takes like 10 minutes. Um, so let's see here. Oops. So if you could describe yourself in just three aspirational words, words that would sum up who you are at your best in the future, what would those words be? I think this is a good question to ask yourself. So let's go into social. In every situation that matters, they know who they want to be and how they want to interact with each other or with others. When asked to choose words that describe their best interaction with others, high performers most often responded with words such as thoughtful, appreciative, respectful, open, honest, empathetic, loving, caring, kind, present, and fair. What is apparent across all high performers is that they anticipate positive social interactions and they strive consciously and consistently to create them. And when you are constantly juggling and feeling depleted, you don't think about the future. You're trying to survive today. And so you start to lose your clear intention for your interactions with your family and teams tomorrow. This here, he talks more later about the feelings down here. We're going to get to that in emotion. But um, the clarity and this anticipation on how you want social interactions to go, it's kind of, I would think, for myself, I would think somebody who's, you know like classically defined as extroverted, I kind of also think of them as being um doing a lot of, let's say, improv, or um able to um rise to the occasion easily. And I didn't really think of them as kind of anticipating how they want interaction to go and planning it and such and so on and so forth. So he talks about that in this chapter, and I found it to be counterintuitive. So if it's true or not, it'd be interesting. So he's saying that here I kind of thought that when it's linking with clarity, if when he's talking about juggling and feeling depleted in this part of the book, one of the things is with interacting with, obviously, with other people, social groups, so on and so forth. And it seems like there was this um, kind of play between your goals and having your clarity and dealing with managing kind of a chaos with social interaction. And I think what was implied here was if you don't do the planning, then you lose, like what he's saying, you lose this intention and you lose this clarity. So I found it to be counterintuitive, but interesting. Again, here we've got if if each person in your family or your close knit group could say just 3 words to summarize the interactions they had with you in life, what would those 3 words be? Let's go to skills. Some
Each of
of the
your
skills
chapters,
kind of go ahead.
that was the social chapter
It's not a chapter, it's like a sub, not even a sub chapter. It's one part of just this.
of
There's
the
a lot of
future chapter. All right.
yeah, this is the chapter way over here, the seek clarity. So within clarity, you have this 4 components, and with
Mhm.
one of the components was the social. He's
Yeah.
going to go back. The chapter that has the most about social interactions is the influence chapter, and there's a bunch in there that I found to be, brand new to me, like insights that he's saying that are best practices and habits that should be adapted. So he
I'm
doesn't. Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in the some of the stuff you're just talking about, but
Mm-hmm.
sure, the influence as well.
Mm-hmm.
The whole book, it's just from what you're showing, digging into that chapter and now saying that was just a subsection. Is it pretty dense?
Yeah,
All right, that's how it's feeling.
it's not dense like philosophy dense,
Yeah.
but you could tell these these guys, um, this author, and I want to say Buckingham. I want to say that's his name, Marcus. We haven't read that book in like 15 years. It's been a while, but that they are at odds, and he's kind of picking his words very carefully and
Mhm.
putting a lot of research um, on on how he's defining things. So the social part, yeah, I think you will enjoy the influence one, the influence chapter, and that's really the last chapter. So we'll make it there
All right.
today. Yeah. Um. So we got skills. This was kind of intuitive to me. Let's see here. Executives score higher on the high performance index. Yeah. Let's see here. So let me say the basic concept here is he's got an idea the primary field of interest. So this is kind of broad. And he uses himself as an example. So he's a researcher at a big consultancy, and he is, I think they got 80,000 employees or something. And he's um, having to try to make a name for himself and work hard. So he's doing all of what you would think would be the best practices within his field. So leadership and performance and so on and so forth, which is their consulting, probably Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies, that kind of thing. And so he decided that he needed to do work, essentially work on a weakness. So that's going against the strength finder view. So he worked on the a weakness would be marketing. Now, in this portion, he's saying that when you work on a new skill, which is going to be a sub, like a pathway to get to your primary field of interest. So his primary field of interest was trying to help people to become better performers, high performers. He needed to learn how to market, right? So when he needed to learn how to market, that was a skill, marketing. So he went in, and now the main takeaway here is to find a very specific skill. Like, so don't learn marketing broadly. He's saying you needed he needed to specialize in specific kinds of marketing. And then that's how high performers learn their skills. They're very specific in the skill. So here's an example that's more abstract. They don't just say music and then try to learn all forms of music, playing guitar, joining an orchestra, singing with a band. They choose, say, a 5-string guitar and find a master teacher and make time for practice sessions that focus more on skill building than on casual exploration. So, and this is what high performers do, how they increase their skill. And remember, skill is part of clarity. This is a subset of clarity. So they're clear on what they want to learn, very specific, and they do it in a very specific way. So this means high performers approach their learning not as generalists, but as specialists. Right. So that was an overview of that. And this section was a surprise for me. So one of the components of having clarity was service. Specifically, high performers care deeply about the difference they are going to make for others in the future in general. And they cater today's activities to delivering those contributions with heart and elegance. When someone becomes disconnected from the future, their contributions to it they underperform. So this is why this is a component of clarity. There's a kind of he uses the term intrinsic motivation often to talk about things that won't really, you're not going to get a monetary payback. And I think service is one of those that has a lot of intrinsic motivation within it. And having, you know, being able to make a dent in the universe kind of thing for some of your activities and goals and so on and so forth seems to be a goal for high performers. What will provide the most value to those who you serve? This is a question high performers are obsessed about. And I don't use the word obsessed lightly. In our interviews, we found that high performers give an extraordinary amount of thought to questions of service, how to add value, inspire those around them, make a difference. Their attention to this area could best be described as a search for relevance, differentiation, and excellence. And he defines those here. Throughout the book, he has again these actionable items called performance prompts, and they're really questions that you would ask yourself. And I believe, did we get to the portion yet? So basically, he has a technique that he says that high performers can use that is very effective called triggers. And so you can set a trigger for like whenever you walk through a doorway or whenever you sit down at your desk or so on and so forth. And so these performance prompts would be activated during a trigger. You would ask a question. So that's what these are about. So this one here, when I think about the future for self, social skill, and service, the area that I haven't had much intention in as I should is, so that's a question. The areas in which I have not been considering those I serve and lead are, again, another question. To leave a lasting legacy, the contributions I can start making now are, and so those are some. This chapter here, this determine the feeling, this I think was it has some counterintuitive truths in here. So ask yourself frequently, what's the primary feeling I want to bring to the situation? What's the primary feeling I want to get from this situation? So high performers demonstrate a tremendous degree of emotional intelligence, or what he calls willful feeling. Emotions are different from feelings. So this is new to me. Emotions are generally instinctive. A triggering event, which can be an external situation or simply our brain anticipating something, generates an emotional response like fear, amusement, sadness, anger, relief, or love. Often the emotional response happens without much of our conscious will. We just suddenly feel the emotion because our brain interpreted something happening and attached a meaning and emotion to it, guided mostly from how we sense the situation from our past. This doesn't mean that we aren't conscious of our emotions or that we can't also generate emotion consciously. So now that's emotion. The word feeling here is used to refer to a mental portrayal of an emotion. This is not a precise statement, but it's helpful in our purposes here. Think of emotion as mostly a reaction, and feeling is an interpretation. Before entering any performance situation, high performers contemplate how they want to feel, regardless of what emotion might come up. And they envision how they want to feel leaving the situation, regardless of what emotions might come up. So that part, this piece was actually much larger than this part of the mind map. I'm sorry, of the book. And he has examples of high performers, so whether they be athletes or a musician or some executive, and they actively would walk through how they change, how they're, you would normally, what I would call normally changing or controlling their emotion. He's saying that they're controlling the interpretation of their feeling. And part of it is deciding what you want it to be beforehand. So it's so thoroughly obvious that high performers are generating the feelings they want more often than taking the emotions that land on them. All right. So that there, he's got, okay, we're
So
going to
is
get,
that
go
about
ahead.
thinking about situations and then preparing yourself for how you would like to respond to them?
Yeah.
I'm very generic, but
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. Um, this part, I
To
think
me,
you,
some
you're
of
going to
that
like it.
sounds like it's it's applying a lot of different things, like emotional intelligence would be the simple one, but there's a lot of different things around responding, how you're going to respond and how you're going to process, and including stuff that gets into like trauma, and it's kind of all over the place. But
Yes.
those extremes, I think, like trauma, if you look at trying to get someone who's experienced something, bad, war, PTSD, whatever it would be,
Hmm.
then part of doing those, and I'm using this extreme just to
Hmm.
make it a little maybe easier to see, but you're part of the processing it is getting yourself to respond to that prior event in a new way so that it doesn't keep coming back up. So that's processing, but it's a similar thing where you're training your mind to respond in a certain situation different from how it would react. And of course, that's an extreme case, but you can do it for simpler things or more minimal things.
Hmm. Yeah, he's got a portion on managing stress. That's another part of the book. I think we'll get to it. But this portion is managing the future on what you're going to feel. So, I mean, this whole part he calls wheel fulfilling. He's heard a lot of performers describe this practice in some form or another. They can sense their emotional state in any given moment, and they often choose to override it by defining what they want to feel. Um,
Interesting.
yeah. So my automatic emotions don't have to be in charge. My feelings are my own. Emotions come and go. They're mostly immediate, instinctive, physical, but feelings last and are often the result of rumination, like what you were just saying, which we have control over. Anger can be the emotion that comes up, but bitterness, a lasting feeling, doesn't have to be your lifelong sentence, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
yeah,
How we respond to our emotions um, is how I would just take all of this. How are you going to
yeah,
respond? And it doesn't have to be that you just wish it would be some way. You can proactively
yeah.
work towards a response. It's interesting.
Yeah, and he's that remember the
How
act
about
this
applying it?
is in the clarity chapter. This is all about the future. So he's talking about being clear about what your feeling will be in a situation. So this example here, he was saying a high level athlete that was a track runner that had been winning for a whole year. So, I don't know who it would be, but um, for high level athletes and high performers from all walks of life, flow is a feeling that they choose. It's summoned, not a lucky emotion that conveniently happens to show up just in time. The example he was using, the athlete was having the panic of having to do the performance often, and then they learned to know that the emotion was going to come. So the emotion would be your heart is beating faster, your hands are a little sweaty, those types of things. And then they changed it from fear. They planned for it to be heightened awareness. I think it was another feeling that they said. So instead of it being like a panic or something like that, they still have the emotion side, but they're planning the feeling to be something else. So, um, all right. So there's that. I found that to be interesting. And he doesn't just touch on that only here, he touches on that in different places. Meaning, let's get into this. High performers tended to equate four factors with meaning. First, they linked enthusiasm with meaning. So, again, this is under clarity. So, how do you determine what's meaningful, like priorities and so on and so forth? Um, as part in the context of clarity. So, in some of these I've found to be counterintuitive. Yeah. So they linked enthusiasm with meaning. When forced to choose between two projects, for example, they mentioned they would do one that they would could be the most enthusiastic about. So that seems pretty straightforward. Let me not do that. So high performers feel that their work has more meaning when they are in a peer group that challenges them. This goes back to that social component. In their everyday life, too, they valued being around inspiring people who push them to grow more than, say, people who are just fun to be around or generally kind. High performers relate. And so this is connection. I don't have it written here. So the first one is enthusiasm, second one is connection. High performers relate satisfaction with meaning. That's a third one, I believe. Okay. And so this whole satisfaction, what high performers think, passion plus growth plus contribution equals satisfaction. Contribution being that service, growth being skills, passion, kind of within that enthusiasm. A fourth way that high performers say their efforts have meaning is they make that their life makes sense. And psychologists call this coherence. And so we're going to say enthusiasm plus connection plus satisfaction plus coherence equals meaning. Mm, So there's a nice little chart here that you can use to help you with the clarity. This would be a thing that you could do, I think he said once a week, where you start thinking and you start really trying to be focused or get clarity on, or practice clarity, I should say, every week, including feeling. All right. Is that it? Yeah. So that chapter I found to be very useful to me. This chapter I found to have definitions that I didn't really think of at all whatsoever. Um, this is the third. Wait, two, three. Yeah. Generate energy. Here we go. So when he's defining energy, he's calling it mental, physical, and emotional. It hits all three of those. And he's saying this is why high performers have much more passion, stamina, and motivation. We measure energy, and I to take a step back, a lot of these terms, they're really defined by the questions. When and I found this to be in sociology and psychology, when when there's a term like grit or something like that, they say a child has grit or someone has grit. It's really, they do a questionnaire of 30 questions, and then how the responses are to those questions, they start being able to tease out groups and say, and then they draw a circle around that and call it grit. That's grit, that's this, or what have you. This energy, they did that here. So it's good to know the questions that they ask. And so in the book, it's good to kind of get a good feel from that. And then a word like energy means more. So here in our high performance research, we measure energy by asking people to rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 5 through statements such as, I have the mental stamina to be present and focused throughout the day. I have the physical energy I need to achieve my goals every day. In general, I feel cheerful and optimistic. Right. So those are quite the positive questions, some of them. And then there's a reverse score. So my mind feels slow and foggy. Right? I'm physically exhausted too often, and I feel a lot of negative energy and emotions. This is what they're meaning by energy. The lower your ratings in energy, the lower your overall happiness. So a lot of that in this chapter. The lower your enthusiasm for taking on challenges. This is important for this word too, actually. And the lower the perception of your own success versus your peers' success, the lower your confidence in the face of adversity, the lower the degree of influence you'll have with others, and the lower likelihood you'll eat well or exercise. So let's go ahead and this whole thing. This one right here, the lower your enthusiasm for taking on challenges, I think that one, all of these are to get, obviously useful, but that one I think is a good definition for energy, is a good addition to the definition. So low energy not only hurts your ability to reach high performance, it pervades all aspects of your life. You feel less happy. You don't take on the big challenges again. There we go again. You'll feel as everyone's passing you by, your confidence tanks, you eat worse, you get fatter, struggle to get people to believe in you, buy from you, follow you, support you. It's also related to education, creativity, assertiveness. Tends to mean more energy someone has, the more likely they are to pursue higher levels of education, come up with creative ideas, and speak up for themselves. Regarding job roles, CEOs and senior executives have the highest energy, significantly higher than those in other roles we've measured, such as managers, entry level workers, students, blah, blah, blah. This is an interesting one. So, CEOs and senior executives have energy equivalent to that of professional athletes. It turns out that to make it to CEO, you have to care about your energy as much as an NFL quarterback does, because it takes about the same level of energy. Quite interesting. Let me take a step back here. One of the reasons why I think that this book is useful for cooperatives is when I went through some research. So what wasn't really a book, but it was a collection of papers about the benefits of cooperatives and some of the drawbacks. And one of the drawbacks is brain drain. Cooperatives can suffer from brain drain. So, I mean, to simplify it, companies that have a whole lot of money can steal your people. There's a price that people like can give an offer that people can't refuse, kind of thing. And I'm thinking some of the attributes for high performers that this subset of people, these are the people that I think cooperatives need to figure out how to hold on to them as long as possible. And so when you're thinking of something like this, CEOs, senior executives have the energy equivalent to that of a professional athlete. Kind of not something that I would really have thought of as a property to that would be sought after, or that you would need to try to cherish, or create incentives to keep, that kind of thing. But that's why I think this book can be important, just for kind of planning on how you would make an incentive system and for within a cooperative to try to limit the brain drain.
That's unexpected for me.
Which
It
one?
makes sense, the energy level, but it's not, I wouldn't have thought it, but I
Yeah.
guess it makes sense.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, with these definitions, when we're going, the lower your enthusiasm for taking on, the lower your energy and lower enthusiasm for taking on challenges. And then, um, where's the other one? It is basically that ability to take on new challenges is, I think, a one that for me, that's a critical insight, and that is something that you would want um, within whatever group you want. High performers, I would just say at this point, you want high performers in your group as much as you can, and that one, and then this level, so willing to take on challenges. And when he relates it to professional athletes who, okay, they're in front of everyone, that, it's easy to think about their challenges because they get embarrassed on national television and that kind of thing. So they really, they've got challenges that are in there, right in front of everyone. And saying that executives are, they measure along that side, that's saying something, you know. uh so uh so another, a big part of energy is managing your stress. And let's go in here. So I guess I'll say at a high level, so we're getting close. We've got stress with that can be managed by um kind of essentially meditation, which he's gonna talk about here. And then you've got the, let's say here, still in the same chapter, he's gonna talk about exercising as well. So let's see. This here, this was a hack that he had. So he's saying that you have transitions throughout the day when you go through a doorway. This goes into those triggers I was bringing up before. You have certain transitions, and he's saying that every day people lose tremendous amount of focus, will, and emotional energy by managing their transitions poorly. They also lose the benefits of greater mental and physical stamina throughout the day. So he's having these transition periods, like walking through a doorway, that's opportunity for you to have a trigger. And then the trigger, you can do things like as far as resetting your energy, so on and so forth. um so these transitions are immensely valuable. Powerful space for freedom between activities is space that you'll discover the greatest restorer and amplifier of energy. We can go back and think about that Pomodoro technique where you had, and he's got something similar. It says 45, between 45 to 60 minutes, you should take a break and do some of these um, exercises, but you should, leave your phone alone, don't look at email, and really reset, you know. Um, so here's an exercise he has: close your eyes and repeat the word release, so on and so forth. So these kind of meditation type techniques, and he's got some, you know, studies and so on and so forth. Let's see. So this, bring the joy. This is going into this, talking about how you control feeling as well. So joy plays a huge part in what makes high performance successful. It's talking about, well, I mean, you can, one of the greatest predictors of a good life: high energy and high performance. People with more positive emotion have satisfying marriages, make more money, have better health. Positive emotion is present. Students do better on tests. Managers make better decisions, more effective with their teams. Physicians make better diagnoses. And people are kinder and more helpful to each other. Neuroscientists have even found that positive emotions prompt new cell growth, plasticity, whereas negative emotions cause decay. High performers are joyful when they talk about their craft. So positive emotion is a prerequisite for high performance, and only way and only you are in charge of enduring emotional experience. Remember the lesson for last chapter where we talk about how you can choose your feelings. Um, let's see here. There was something here. Oops. This was an insight. So high performers shared that they enjoyed the anticipation of an event just as much as the event itself. Neuroscientists have found the same anticipation can be just as powerful in releasing hormones such as dopamine, which makes you happy, as the actual positive event. So this goes into this, the anticipation goes into the planning, the clarity, these types of things as well. So um, that's where he was aligning these things. So here is the part about triggers. We're going to kind of already talk about it. So take control of your thoughts. This is very much a practical application. Um, sub, subsection. So this is what I was saying, a door frame trigger. So walking through a door, you can have certain questions that you ask yourself. And again, these can be about increasing clarity. These are here, he's focusing on the whole going between emotion and feeling. So you're planning, again, future planning on what you're going to feel. And then also trying to control how you feel. So it should say here, what level of presence and vibration do I feel right now on a scale of 1 to 10? By asking myself this question, I'm checking on my emotional state, scoring, and choosing whether it's sufficient to how I want to feel and how I want to live my life. Often, when I feel a level 5 or low, my mind snaps attention and says, hey, man, you're lucky to be alive. Raise your energy and enjoy life. Right? So, he has a touch trigger when he touches, or saying that you could have that. And a bunch of other, a stress trigger. So that is a good chapter to go through for actionable items for trying to do what we're talking about with the feeling side. And that's going to be increasing high performance. My gosh. And then this whole portion is optimized health. Essentially, you need to work out at least 3 times a week, probably 5. And it's going to increase everything else, including stress, or not increase it, but mitigate stress. It's a predictor of high performance. And so he's got a bunch of things in here where he's talking about how it affects your cognitive function. Some of this part was intuitive to me. Uh,